मेरी आवाज ठीक है ना?
हाँ, फर्स्ट क्लास। परफेक्ट।
ये आपको अब आवाज आई है क्या मेरी?
A very good afternoon to all. This is Jatin Luthra from the Office of GACS India Secretariat. Would like to welcome you all in this curated webinar organized by School of Excellence to introduce the business effectiveness through self-audits and bring you the answers from the industry veteran. Today we have Mr. Rajesh Sandeep, who is an independent auditor and trainer. And to just know a little more about Mr. Sandeep, he's an established auditor and trainer in data centers domain, cybersecurity, data privacy, information security, business continuity, energy management, quality management, facility management, GDPR, and PIMS. Rajesh is an ex-government of India officer, national security operations. Post serving the nation, Rajesh moved to facility management, critical infrastructure management of telecom data centers, project management data centers. He served corporate like CBRE, Airtel, Nextra Data, and Grey Orange. He was entrusted with additional responsibilities of ISMS and BCMS implementer, internal auditor, and chief business continuity officer. Since last 6 years, Rajesh has taken auditing and training as full-time profession. He carries expertise in data centers design and operations, data protection. During his Airtel leading telecom operator tenure as a DC head NCR, he was instrumental in supervising the DC design and project implementation as per TIA 942 requirements on architectural, telecom, electrical, and mechanical parameters pertaining to Tier Rated 3 design. He has been conducted data centers audits as per TIA 942B requirements. He has been conducting ISO MSS audits for multiple management system standards. Well, he conducts training programs, CISA, CISM awareness, internal auditor, implementer, and lead auditor for ISO 27001, 22301, 50001, 45001, 41001, SCADA Security Manager, GDPR, CDPO, and Data Center Domain Certification Program with CDCP, which is also called as Certified Data Center Professional, CDCS, Certified Data Center Specialist, and CDFOM, Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Manager. Well, there's a huge to say about Mr. Rajesh Sandeep, but for now, I would request Mr. Rajesh Sandeep to kindly take it over from here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Jatin. So let's welcome all the participants who are going to be there.
Mr. Singhi, you can start now because since we are live on the YouTube and we have our audience watching you from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Jatin. Let me share my screen first. So, welcome friends. A small introduction about audits and how these can be effective. So today's topic is business effectiveness through self-audits. So let's start without any further delay. So welcome to this session. I hope you'll be able to get some insights into auditing and the benefits. So today's agenda is very brief and very precise. One, we are going to talk about what is an audit. Then we will have a discussion on why do we need an audit. Fine, what is an audit is okay. Most of us know about that. But the big question is, why do we need an audit? How does it benefit us? Is it actually required or is it just a wastage of time and money and resources? So look into that and then after establishing the need of an audit in our day-to-day work, we will talk about why self-audit. So far, all of us have seen organizations being audited by somebody external to the organization or by the internal audit function of an organization. So let's have a look at all these 3 points one by one. First and foremost, what is an audit? If you refer to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it will give you a definition of an audit as a formal examination of an organization's or an individual's accounts or financial situation. Yes, it's right. Predominantly, the word audit has been associated with the financials. And that is why we have chartered accountants, we have got established financial auditors, and finance audit is a very detailed audit process. But audit is not limited to only the finance or accounts or the transactions. Audit is applicable to almost in every aspect of our business operations. As such, audit, if we look at, is a methodical examination and review of any activity, any process, or any system as a whole. And the audit has got one characteristic, that it is always an unbiased examination which is based on facts. So here I would like to tell you about a myth. The myth is that people think that an auditor is always looking for a fault. And the basis of this myth is that usually it happens that whenever there's an audit, there would always be certain findings, which would be the deviations from the current processes, which would be treated as faults. And as such, the stigma for an auditor is that auditor is a fault finder. Now, let me share with you my experience as an auditor. An auditor is anything but a fault finder. In fact, the right way to look at an auditor is to be a business enabler. Because auditor, when starts auditing, auditor carries an unbiased approach, and auditor is not at all fault. It is duly reported the audit report as a positive format, and is noted in the audit report as a non. Do we need an audit? Okay, so sorry for the brief interruption here. So here we were. Why do we need an audit? All of us follow certain processes and we all try to do our job as per the processes. Then why there is a need for an audit? Now, the audits are basically conducted to identify if there are any gaps in how an activity is to be conducted and how that activity is being conducted. Please look at the statement once again. How an activity is to be conducted would be present in the standards or the guidelines adopted by an organization. And how that activity is being conducted depends on that human being who's interested to execute that activity or execute that process. Now, in an organization, every process is developed with certain specified intended outcomes. So the purpose of the business processes is to achieve those intended outcomes which are aligned to an organization's business strategy. So this is where audit helps us. Then next, we also identify during our audits or through the audits if there is any non-compliance that may have occurred over a period of time. So all of us know that there are certain regulations, there are certain laws which we need to abide by as an organization. And there are certain compliances which could be one time, and certain compliances needs to be done periodically on monthly basis, quarterly basis, or annual basis. So over a period of time, there might be a possibility that an organization, due to some reason or as an inadvertent error, might have missed a compliance fulfillment. So during the audits, this is also one of the focus area. And it is not only about looking at what is going right or what is not going so right. Audit also helps us in identifying certain more opportunities for improvement. Because during the audit, we are reviewing our own processes as they are today. And while auditing, during those discussions that happen between the auditor and the auditee, when the current practices are mapped against the industry practices, there would always be opportunities for improvement. So audit brings up that opportunity as well. Right. Now, why is it that we are so sure that an audit is required? It is because of the human nature. In due course of time, there is always a high probability of complacency. We get used to the way we work and we are become confident that we are doing everything in the right manner, everything in the supposedly right manner. And that is where we become complacent. So that can lead to adverse impacts. Then in a team, there are different individuals. There would be a common process, but people have different approaches. People have different attitudes. So they may work in a different manner. And that is where there's a possibility of a process not being followed in principle or not being followed to the last letter. Then what happens if a new team member joins in? Now that person joins our organization from another organization where the things were being done probably in a different manner. The overall objective might be the same, but the way the data was collected, the way the data was analyzed, the way the process was followed in that organization is different from what is now being followed in this new organization. Take an example of a visitor management as one of the simplest processes. Every organization has got a visitor management process. But then, barring the few commonalities between the organizations, most of the organizations have got different requirements. Some organizations may have very tight restrictions, other organizations may not have those tight restrictions. In some organizations, visitors are free to make an entry and approach the reception. In other organizations, visitors need to be accompanied by somebody. It is all related to the organization's own business strategies. So audits are conducted, and even this aspect is also checked into whether the new joinees have been trained properly on the processes or not, or are there any deviations in the processes. Another factor that leads to the deviations is the lack of regular supervisory reviews. So in nutshell, the benefit or the purpose of conducting an audit is to get an assurance that the processes are working to give the intended outcomes. So for the organization's top management, it is very important that they should always have this assurance that all the processes which are aligned to the organization's business objectives are in an autopilot mode and they are working in the right manner, and the organization is able to get the intended outcomes from each and every process of the organization. Then the audits actually help in detecting the anomalies or some deviations that might have happened because of the reasons which I just shared in the previous slide, maybe due to the complacency of people, maybe due to a new team member, or maybe to any change in the environment, or maybe any change in the regulations. So there could be multiple reasons which may lead to deviations or anomalies. So audits help in detecting those in a timely manner. And then once these anomalies or the deviations are detected by an organization through an auditor, the organization now can take the corrective action. Now, taking the corrective action actually gives us double benefit. One, a correction is done. Two, it also presents an opportunity for improving the process. So if you would have heard about a PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act cycle, that is where it works for. Whatever gaps identified, we take corrective actions and we will improve upon the system. It is known as continual improvement. So now we come to the last part. Why self-audit? When we have got auditors, when we have got internal audit functions, when we have got external auditors, then why self-audit? Again, the answer lies there itself. Self-audit because the audits by the external auditors will usually happen once in a year, like your ISO certification audits. Right? And even if the organization is having an internal audit function, the internal audits would also be conducted at certain periodical intervals, either annual or half yearly, and very rarely, in some organization, the audits happen on quarterly basis. So these gaps of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Now, these gaps of period between two subsequent audits lead to a delay in identification of any anomalies or deviations, and these gaps persisting for long periods may have a very significant adverse impact on the organization. So that is where self-audit comes into picture. One, the self-audits can be done more frequently. Why? Because now the onus of doing the audit lies on the functional head or on the department head. So everybody is auditing its own department, which is like reviewing it on regular basis. Right? So whenever any self-audit happens, it will give an opportunity to the departmental head for an early detection of any anomaly or a deviation. You don't have to wait for an external auditor or another assigned internal auditor to come in, do the audit, and then submit a report and then point out a deviation. And obviously, during the self-audit, the process remains the same. You have audited your own function. You have looked into the processes, how these are implemented. You have looked into the intended outcomes. You have done the mapping. And if the gaps are there, yes. Now, being the process owner, you are the one who's responsible for taking corrective actions. The beauty of the self-audit is that now you can take a corrective action in a timely manner without any undue delay. And self-audit results, these actually boost the confidence, not only of the function, its employees, but even that of the top management, the governing body of the organization. They have a better assurance when they know or they have implemented the process of self-auditing. So That is where I would like to end this story. Self audits will definitely improve efficiency and effectiveness of business processes. So, in the due course of time, we would be coming up with the uh, training program on the self audits, wherein we will be talking about what are the audit steps, what are the processes that needs to be taken into account for self audits, what are the do's and don'ts of the self audits, and how these self audits are going to be more beneficial. We'll be looking at some practical examples, and we would have a great interactive face-to-face session. So I look forward to joining the training session as and when in near future it is being declared. Thank you very much, friends. Uh, Thanks for your time. And if we have any queries, most welcome to raise your queries. I would try to answer your queries up to the best of my knowledge. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Rajesh Sandeep. I think there is one question which everyone would like to get an answer to, that who are the right set of people whom should go for these trainings in the organization.
I would say every manager who's leading a team, even of one or two people or larger teams, and every functional head must understand the self-auditing, and they should actually start conducting self-audits and assessments on their own functions. So the
Okay,
process owners, the people who are responsible for implementing controls, all those people can get benefit.
right. And so are there different levels of these trainings, the audits? What exactly, what are the key takeaways, if you have to say, what are the key takeaways which the trainees would get from this training?
Okay, this training one would be beneficial to everybody who is interested. And I'm not talking about everybody who's interested in an audit, rather everybody who's interested in looking at improvements. It is, reviewing your own work, but from an auditor's mindset. And, even the masterpieces of arts, they were not developed in the first stroke. The artists have been, creating some works and then reviewing it, then improving it, till the time they got satisfied that it would be now a masterpiece. Same is the way we conduct our day-to-day operations. So any process owner, when you audit your own processes, you would be able to identify if there are any gaps or not. And gaps are there. To be very honest with you, during my facility days, what I saw was, okay, as an organization, we were monitoring the consumption of diesel. And there was a set process to get the diesel. There was a set process to right from procurement of the diesel to getting the tanker inside the building, getting it emptied, making a note, taking the readings in the logbooks, taking the safety precautions. Everything was there in the process, is crystal clear. Now, despite having those processes, there were times when some new person would be there, he would not done the proper thing, or he would not have taken the actual measurement of the diesel, or the logbook entries would not have been made for 2-3 days. And when you check with them, you will find that they have taken the readings on a piece of a paper, thinking that they will upload it at a later time, and that later time would never come. Now, these are very small gaps, but when they get accumulated, they can lead to disasters also. So I hope I was able to give you some insight into that.
No, I think it is quite quite impactful. And just one last question. Would there be any specific tools for audits which we're going to cover in this training?
I would be covering in this particular training, we would be talking about the self-auditing or the self-assessment process. So we'll be talking about how to identify what needs to be audited. It is not that everything needs to be audited. So we'll be talking about how to briefly look into the risk factors, how to do a risk assessment first, identify the critical areas which need your constant monitoring based on the risk matrix, and then put those things into your periodic self-auditing. It is not to be done on daily basis, but depending on your need, you can do a monthly self-audit as a review mechanism. And the tools for the auditing, basically auditing is based on a certain statistical tools, especially when the data is concerned. So we will talk about some kind of sampling methodology or how to use statistics or the analytical tools. Knowledge of Excel should be a prerequisite because that is where you can do the trend analysis. But the stress would be more on identification of the gaps and then the need to take the corrective actions.
Right, got it. Thank you so much, Mr. Sunil, once again for such a
Most
valuable
welcome, Jatin.
input. And to our audience, we'll be rolling out the link for the registration of this training. And this is going to happen on 30th of April and 1st of May, which is Saturday, Sunday. All information will be provided to all our members. So we'll look forward to your support. And if anyone has any queries, they can reach out to the India Secretariat and we'll be happy to answer it more. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Sandeep, for your valuable time. And we look forward to see you in the training now on 30th of April.
Thank you very much, Jatin. Looking
Thank you.
forward to have a wonderful session.